Have you ever actually wondered why that is? Like, why is it in Thailand particularly that there's such a prominence of Kathoeys there versus other places?
My sense is there's a cultural aspect to it in that there cultures in which the male role or what's considered acceptable for men in terms of how they behave is more rigid. So if someone deviates from that, then they're not considered male. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Because you'll see that, because critics will say culture plays a larger role than biology, which it doesn't. But at the same time, I don't think it plays zero role. I think it can influence the interpretation of gender, but it doesn't influence ultimately how someone will actually identify. So those individuals, if they were in a Western context, they would be considered gay men. Right.
It's ironic because Buddhists believe that people that are Kathoeys is not by choice, but because of karma. And it's because they've sinned in their past lives. So they frame it as something that they don't have control over. It's just because of the person that they lived in their past lives. Yet there's such a prominence there, despite it being such a religious nation. So I just find these things like fascinating of how these things come about and how different it is here in the US. And apparently...
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Well, I was just going to say some people will say third gender cultures are a sign that gender is not binary, but I talk in the book as to why that's not true. Because as I said, they are, for the most part, if they were in a North American setting, they'd be considered gay men.
Gotcha. Do you ever think that this could change in the future where, assuming that we are our brains and everything else in our bodies could technically be replaced by robotic parts or 3D printing hearts and stuff like that, is there a case that where it's just our brains that are left and we can just transplant our brain into a robotic body, that genders don't really play a role?
I think that technology would be great for people who do want to transition, in that it could potentially facilitate transitioning for them. Mm-hmm. But I do think at the end of the day, so it's funny because you were saying how with, say, what's considered acceptable for, or what's considered attractive in men. And there's been, I think it's good that men are encouraged to express their emotions, express vulnerability. I don't think men should be held to a different standard than women in that way. But I also think straight women are being told that men are toxic and that men who are masculine or stereotypically masculine are somehow harmful to them, or that they're sexual predators or something like that, which I don't agree with. But these same women will still be very much attracted to very masculine men. So I think ultimately, unless we take the role of the prenatal environment out of the equation, how our brain has developed is still very much going to be set by biology. So even if we do have the technology to completely change our physical reality or our bodies, there's still going to be a very strong element of that is preset.